What's going on, FA Nation? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS live stream. I am your host, James Grande. We have Sean Mitchell on the other side for the second day in a row, Sean. We're again to work together. Big shout out to John and Pemba for the playbook and the production today. Sean, Big 10 game slate, running a little behind due to some technical difficulties, but let's hop right into the slate, shall we? Let's hop into point guard. We have, looking at John's playbook, we have two guys up here at the top of the point guard list, and Luka Doncic, Russell Westbrook. I personally like the savings off Russ today from Luka. It is a back-to-back for Luka, and the game environment for Russ, is a little better than Luka's. That said, probably get Luka at lower ownership today after struggling on Tuesday. What are your thoughts here at the top of the point guard position?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to flood again to Harden and again to LeBron James, who is under 10K. I know we'll get there, but I wanted to bring up that point because, we're kind of getting the same situation that we had last night where we have quite a few studs on the slate and we're kind of wondering who to pay up for. The good thing about Luka is he only played like 27 minutes last night. So in that blowout, within that still, he did play a whole lot. So I totally expect him to hopefully play the full game on this back-to-back. We know that Sacramento probably will try to slow it down. They're a little slower-paced team, but it's also a really good spot. We know they struggle against the point guard and small forward spot. And then Russell, I'm definitely a big fan of as well. I know we talked about it already. In the last time that he had a back-to-back like this and sat out the first leg, he put up like 56 or 57 fantasy points. He's continued to stay under 10K in these spots, which is just insane. So I do like the savings on Russ, but I do think he'll probably be a little popular, knowing that he's fresh off of a day off. We know he's getting over a 30% usage rate on those back-to-backs. I was on Luka last night and he let me down. I'm probably going to go right back to the well.
Yeah, we got to have a short memory in DFS. That's a key to remember, especially. This game is random. Luka could go for 70 in 3 quarters tonight. Worth noting, Kristaps Porzingis is expected to play tonight for whatever that's worth to you guys. Moving down the point guard list, we have Ben Simmons in a great spot against the Brooklyn Nets, who apparently are going to be full strength. Kyrie Irving is going to play. We have not gotten any word that Karis LeVert isn't going to play either. So both of them likely playing their first back-to-back since returning to the lineup. That makes it more intriguing, especially when you are considering if those guys were off the floor. I don't know if Brooklyn would have been able to keep this game close on the road. So I think Ben Simmons in an absolute smash spot. It's a great paced game. Brooklyn sucks against point guards. Let's just be blunt about that. They don't defend point guards very well. And Simmons is in a great spot. The rest of the position I'm interested in because it's a really, really deep position today. And it's going to be a lot of combinations of guys. Let's just say 6K or more. We have Kyle Lowry against OKC in an exploitable matchup. We have Kyrie Irving fresh off 60 at sub 8K across the industry. We have Kemba Walker at 7-2 on DraftKings and 6-7 sans Jason Tatum. And then we have Malcolm Brogdon still under 7K. I think people forgot. And I think the algorithms forgot how good Malcolm Brogdon was prior to his injury. I don't know about you, Sean, but this position is loaded. And if I'm not spending up for Russell Westbrook or Ben Simmons, Irving, Walker, Brogdon, and a combination of two of those guys sounds really good to me.
Yeah. I'm not exactly crazy about Kyle Lowry's price, but I do think he'll probably go unowned. With them getting back likely Gasol tonight as well, going with Pascal. They got Powell back already. They're getting a lot of their firepower back. Lowry's going to kind of distribute that usage a little bit more evenly. So I'm not exactly crazy about that one, even though it is a really good spot in OKC. The Irving is kind of intriguing. Yeah, being at around 8K and, like I said, going for 60-plus last night, it's really interesting. I think he had a little bit of a spot last night, obviously. Philadelphia is not exactly the greatest against the point guard spot, but they are decently on the defensive side. Kemba Walker is that's the one that blew my mind, especially now without Tatum. price is just super cheap. He's probably going to be a little popular, which I don't mind. I think he has 50-plus upside here. He gains about 4.5% usage rate without Tatum on the floor. Tatum was taking 16 to 20 shots a game. Those are going to have to be evenly distributed, and his usage rate was around 27%. So Kemba Walker is definitely one that I will absolutely be locking in, especially in cash. I think you have to go there.
Yep.
And then Malcolm Brogdon as well. Going against Minnesota, who we know we've been fading that point guard spot against Minnesota for quite a while now. Brogdon is just super cheap. He's under 7K.
Right.
We just seen him go for, a pretty good amount. And it was without Sabonis. So that'll be interesting to see if Sabonis does play, if he is ruled in. However, the spot is great, and he's just super cheap. So he's really affordable.
Something to note about that, you mentioned the Philly defense against point guards. That Brogdon game where he almost went for 50 did come against Philly, just to note. Just go up to the top real quick. We'll run through some players that John has written up top that didn't actually make the playbook. Damian Lillard, great spot for tournaments, considering it's Houston, that the pace of that game is going to be tremendous, especially on the Portland side. Derrick Rose against Boston. We know D. Rose is scoring 20-plus a night and giving us about 5-6 assists. And the minutes have been great. 3 of the last 4 over 30, which we didn't really expect, but twice 35. Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty incredible to see the resurgence. He's one of my favorite players of all time. So, I mean, it's been great to see. It's been great to see just from a fan perspective, not just a DFS standpoint. Markelle Fultz against the Lakers could be in for a massive usage game. We already know DJ Augustine and Mike Carter-Williams are out. Evan Fournier currently questionable. I don't know who else they would play. Fultz would pretty much be on the floor the entire game.
It's a small sample size, but yeah, Fultz sees almost a 14.6% bump without Fournier and the rest of those guys on the floor. So keep that in mind.
That is not a small number. 14% is a massive.
It's a small sample size, not very many minutes, but yeah, it's a big, big number.
Ish Smith, we know, is a fantastic play anytime Bradley Beal's been out. He's still very fairly priced across the industry. Bradley Beal currently questionable. And Monty Morris thrown in there as a dart if Jamal Murray is eventually ruled out. Let's move over to shooting guard position where we have James Harden. I think we can play James Harden if we want to. It's a great spot. It is on a back-to-back. He took 1 million shots last night. He was very good. Efficient last night. But again, 1 million shots with a rested Russell Westbrook. We can go there if we want, but I think there are better spots. I know you're a big DDR guy. You love DeMar DeRozan. He has been so good lately. He has been so safe, I think, is the most impressive thing. Like every night it's 40-plus fantasy points right now. Zach LaVine has been great. There's a massive price discrepancy on Zach LaVine. 9,300 on DK, probably can't pay that. 8,300 though on FanDuel, Sean. And then we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander here. Those are probably the 4 top guys here at the shooting guard. I don't know if it's considered point chasing, but it's also hard to ignore a 20-20-10 game out of anybody, not just Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was obviously a ceiling game for SGA.
Right.
Played really well. Yeah, I don't think he's going to grab 20 boards again. That was definitely an outlier performance, and if you got on him on that one, I totally all the props to you, because honestly, it wasn't even a play that I was really even looking at. Yeah, Harden up top is obviously something that we can look at. I was wanting to see in one game that he played against them already, played 33 minutes, put up 36 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and let's see here. He had a couple steals and a block. So Harden obviously had a pretty good game against Portland already once this year. It is a really fast-paced game. We know they're going to struggle against the point guard and shooting guard spot. So, yeah, I don't really mind going back to Harden even with Russ coming back, because I think that will actually gravitate a lot of the ownership off of Harden. I mean, you could get a sub 10 to 15% on Harden and not on a 10-game slate, which would be massive as elite of a play as he is. I like the Zach LaVine call. However, I don't know if I can play him on DraftKings at 9.3. Right. It's, he's $1K cheaper on FanDuel, which is just absolutely insane. So on FanDuel, I have no problems. On DraftKings, I'm more likely to probably pay up or pay down. DDR, as you mentioned, 35-point floor pretty much on any given night. He's a cash game lock. His price has gotten up there a little bit. He's kind of worked out a little bit of his usage with that price going up. It's kind of iffy. Obviously, he's kind of setting more at a value standpoint now. His upside's kind of capped a little bit more with almost being 8K. And then SGA, I think, against Toronto is not exactly a great spot, but it is a decent one here at home. I think, in the shooting guard spot, for me right now, I like paying up for Harden again if I have to. I think it's a good spot.
I agree, but I actually find myself paying down today. Yeah. I love Josh Richardson. John and I talked about it on the podcast last night. Without Joel Embiid, the 76ers offense is very concentrated. There's 4 guys. It's Simmons, it's Richardson, it's Harris, it's Horford. Those are going to be the 4 guys that give us all the fantasy production. We saw Richardson come off a big game, and he's averaged 32 fantasy points over his last 4. I think Josh Richardson really well. Yeah, he's playing great. And 5,700 against Brooklyn is too cheap over on FanDuel, especially. Another guy too cheap on FanDuel, Norman Powell. I think another weird pricing discrepancy. Anytime you see guys $1,000 cheaper over on FanDuel, it's something that you really need to consider very strongly, because we have $10,000 extra dollars to spend on FanDuel, and they're basically handing these guys out for free. Norman Powell, even with everyone back, was fantastic. He played 31 minutes, 33 fantasy points in a game that Pascal Siakam took 17 shots and played 30 minutes. So I think Norman Powell, and I love Terrence Ross tonight. If Justin Fensterman were here, he'd call him Terrence the Sauce Ross, and he's not here, so we're not going to call him that. But shout out to Fency for the fake nickname, even though that nickname belongs to Nick Stauskas, but a conversation for another day. But I think those 3 are probably going to garner quite a bit of ownership down here, just because I think a lot of people will be spending up for LeBron. And if you're spending up for LeBron, you're probably not going to have a lot of salary to get to James Harden. Yeah, you shouldn't. But, I mean, that's also because there isn't a ton of value. I think that we could see some open up with Denver, with Bradley Beal obviously being out. Situations that we're still monitoring. Shooting guards that John also has written down that he did not write up. Jimmy Butler against Spurs, I think, is in a great spot. Jimmy's coming in. Also no Tyler Hero there, so maybe a couple extra minutes and a couple extra shots to go around. Probably Butler's way, considering he's the leader of that offense. Bradley Beal is a great price tag. We just don't know if he's going to play. And if he doesn't play, the obvious pivot is Jordan McRae. It's been that way for however long Beal's been out now, 5-6 games. That's pretty easy. Dennis Schroeder, too cheap. You mentioned it before we got on air. Very, very strong tournament play. I mean, we haven't been getting the peripherals as much as we were, but we know that's in the vault. That's locked down there somewhere, and he can break that out at any time. Marcus Smart against Detroit has been really good offensively, and that's kind of weird to say out loud because we think of Marcus Smart more as a defensive stopper. Let's move over to small forward, where LeBron's the top play of the slate, right? Let's just move on. Top play of the slate, move on?
Right. I'm good. I mean, everybody knows. Anytime you can get LeBron around 10K, you have to play him.
Agreed.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and official word, Marcus Smart starting for Jason Tatum.
He's 5.4 on DraftKings. That's just way too cheap.
Yeah, way too cheap. Cash games?
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, and I have to.
I agree. Marcus Smart, for reference for FanDuel, is $5,000. So
yeah, I mean, he's played all formats.
All formats for sure. LeBron definitely a top play of the slate, but we do have other small forwards to break down, Sean. Let's just rattle down some names here in John's playbook. Pascal Siakam, under 8K across the industry. Tobias Harris, without Joel Embiid, still under 7K. Will Barton against a bad Charlotte defense, possibly without Jamal Murray, and we already know the status of Paul Millsap. He is out. And Jaylen Brown. Let's throw Jaylen Brown into the mix because him and Kemba both get very nice usage bumps without Jason Tatum. Where are we looking here out of those guys for you today?
Obviously, I'm a big fan of the Celtics. Like I said, with Tatum off the floor, there's just so much usage that goes around. With Smart now starting, that's just a great spot. Jaylen Brown is obviously going to get his. He's actually had a couple down games lately, so totally fine with some Jaylen Brown, especially at his price because he was getting up around 8K, and now he's at 6.5 and 6.1. Big fan of Jaylen Brown at the price. Will Barton has been intriguing to me all day long, especially if Murray sits. I really like Will Barton. I just think this is a great matchup. He can exploit it really well. He's at home. He's put up over 30 fantasy points in like all but like 2 or 3 home games. So he's been really efficient at home. And it's just a great spot. And he would probably run a lot of the point guard spot. So I really like, Point Barton, especially if Jamal is out. Of course, Pascal, that's just really tough to not want to play him at 7.8, knowing that he's going to probably play closer to 30 minutes, if not over. And he was close to 9K or more, before he got injured and before he came back. So, yeah, I'm totally fine. I like a lot of the small forwards. I think Will Barton is probably going to be my favorite, especially for tournaments, if Murray sits. And then it's going to be Jaylen Brown, Pascal. Tobias Harris has just not really been doing what we want him to do. Right. It is a great spot against Brooklyn, but he's only put up 36 or more in like his last 2 or 3 without Embiid. I just really want more from him. I know his price isn't terrible, so it's probably going to be, I'm probably going to play the other guys over Tobias, but Pascal's hard to turn down. I like Will Barton, I like Jaylen Brown.
I think Tobias is a nice cash game play. I think has a nice floor. Will Barton, for note, 1.16 fantasy points per minute without Jamal Murray and Paul Millsap, 25.6% usage. So 2 elite numbers. I totally agree with that call. Moving down, we do have Jarrett Culver.
Karl-Anthony Towns is out.
Yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns is out. So I think, the normal suspects for Minnesota, we can go back to the well. Speaking of Minnesota, we have Jarrett Culver averaging 29 fantasy points over his last 5. I think he's fine. Some other small forwards to note. Danilo Gallinari, he's been very good of late. Toronto is exploitable at the small forward, power forward positions. Gordon Hayward, another Celtic we can deploy. I think pretty much anyone with a pulse on the Boston today could be possibly in play. Tim Hardaway on second night of back-to-back, but he was looking really good before the blowout last night. That game obviously got out of hand. They were able to rest him in the 4th. And then Trevor Ariza just still playing minutes upon minutes upon minutes. Let's move over to power forward, Sean, where we have the mispositioned Bam Adebayo on FanDuel, still power forward for whatever forsaken reason that will never change. I still don't understand, but whatever. In a good spot against San Antonio, bad front court, even though he hasn't been great. Al Horford is up here, 67. And now we know there is no Karl-Anthony Towns. I think we can go back to the Rob Covington well as well.
Yeah, Robert Covington was in the value vault. Really like Robert Covington. I think his price on DraftKings at 5.8 is just silly. If you notice, he's had at least 2+ steals and like at least 1 or 2 blocks in his last like 4 or 5 games. He had 6 steals in 2 games ago against Houston. So just crazy numbers from Rob Cov lately, especially with Karl-Anthony Towns out. He's been playing really well. He's been taking 16+ field goal shots. He's taken a lot of 3-pointers. Love the price on him on DraftKings, and he will definitely be in my lineups. Al Horford is another guy that I really like as well. And John even did mention here that he figures him to be a little chalky, but he does get the biggest usage bump with those big 4 we talked about. And he's averaging 1.17 fantasy point per minute, which is really good. We know that Brooklyn struggles against bigs. It's a great spot for Horford. I don't mind eating the chalk a little bit. I think he's definitely a great cash game at cash price. Bam, I think, is a really good play. Obviously, this is a spot that I kind of like both Bam and LMA. I know he's not in the playbook, but I think he wrote him up top. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is also a good play here. But for me, it's really interesting to see Aaron Gordon at 5.8. Well, I'd really like to get your take on Aaron Gordon because he's probably one of my favorites in this list at the price.
I'm going to get to Aaron Gordon in a second, but we're at power forward. Domantas Sabonis will play. I think that's noteworthy news. Will start and will play tonight. Thomas Bryant also, we just got a cap, 16 to 18 minutes, so probably not going to the Thomas Bryant will. But back to Aaron Gordon, I completely agree, especially if Evan Fournier sits. There is really nobody. We're going to see the offense run through Vucevic. Obviously, he's taken 20+ shots in 3 straight games, so that's going to be where they start. But Aaron Gordon's going to need to be more offensive minded here.
Especially with AD on the other side. That's right. A big thing too there,
Right, yeah, and he's going to be matched up a lot of the time against guys like Kyle Kuzma. I think Danny Green and those guys, those perimeter defenders, are too small personally, so we're probably going to see a lot of Kuzma. Plus, that first unit, like as well as Markelle Fultz has looked at times offensively, he's not the polished offensive player as he was coming out of college. Terrence Ross, we know, still comes off the bench. I would assume he could start here if Fournier is ultimately ruled out, and that would obviously bring more scoring to the first unit. But if you know how the Magic rotations work, Gordon plays a lot with the second unit. He's going to need to be their primary second unit scorer to stay in this game, especially considering LeBron is usually the second unit guy for the Lakers, where he checks out in the first and comes in the second quarter and plays large chunks there. So Aaron Gordon is too cheap for the upside that he can possess tonight. We just need him to be more offensively impactful, because we know he's good defensively, peripheral stats. We know he's good on the glass. So I agree with Aaron Gordon completely. I think he's a very strong tournament play, especially if Evan Fournier sits. To round out the power forward position, Davis Bertans, minutes on the rise. We saw him play 26 minutes. And there's no better matchup than the Bulls. The Bulls ranked dead last against power forwards. They ranked dead last against centers. According to DVP, if Bertans sees 30 minutes at this price, I think it could be a GPP winning option, especially if Bradley Beal is not on the floor. We just know there's going to be so much usage to go to Bertans' way. And then Dembuya from the Pistons, under 5K on FanDuel, 5K on DraftKings. I think he's perfectly fine, especially if you think Andre Drummond is going to be limited at all, or if they're just going to give Dembuya the minutes over Markieff. Some guys that John wrote up top, Kyle Kuzma. I don't think we need to explain why Kyle Kuzma is a good play. We've seen 30 actual point upside with Kuzma, with Anthony Davis off the floor recently. Thaddeus Young, if he draws the start, I think he's very appealing. They could go that route, considering Washington doesn't really play a big lineup. Thomas Bryant's about 6'10", so they could match him up with Lauri Markkanen. I don't think that's the worst idea. And then Jeremy Grant, who we know is going to play around 30 minutes, and we know Paul Millsap's already out. But Sean, let's round it out at the center position. And you talked about it before we hopped on air about Andre Drummond, and you don't think anyone's going to play him. I mean, I agree, and I think people are upset because he has snake bit them 2 slates in a row, especially considering he just didn't give a shit, to say the least, last slate. I mean, getting outworked by one of the
Jahlil Okafor.
Yeah, by Jahlil Okafor. I mean, I don't know how else to say that's pretty pathetic. Ownership projections sub 10%. I know that's something that you love to see, especially considering your GPP background.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be trying to jam in Drummond here. Boston, even they're starting Tyus. I'm sorry, but Tyus is not going to be able to match.
He's 6'5". He's 6'5". There's no chance he can.
There's not a chance that he's going to be able to match up with Drummond tonight. Even Cantor is going to struggle a little bit with Drummond. Derrick Rose is starting at the point guard spot. We just got word, which goes totally against my rule, so I will not be playing Derrick Rose now. But yeah, back to Drummond. It's a great spot. He's cheap. He's only 9.4 on DraftKings. Anytime that you can get Drummond under 10K, I think you just have to jam him in, especially if you're talking about sub 10% ownership against Boston, who struggles against the center spot. Yeah, I want all the Drummond that I can get. Everybody else can fade him because of his last 2 games. I'm going right back to it.
The only reason I would fade him personally is because we're getting Nikola Jokic against the Hornets, and there aren't many better spots. There's potential to not have Jamal Murray. There's potential for not to have Gary Harris. We already know Paul Millsap is out, and he's averaged 52 over his last 5 games.
You couldn't find a better spot.
Couldn't find a better spot, and this is usually the dud that Nikola Jokic will lay. He will lay an egg in this spot, but it is undeniably a great spot. We also already mentioned when we were talking about Aaron Gordon that Nikola Vucevic has taken 20-plus shots in 3 straight games. Is it the best matchup in the world? No. Dwight Howard is still a good defender. JaVale McGee is a very good, potent shot blocker on the low block. So it's not going to be an easy matchup for Vucevic, but the offense is going to run through him, easy matchup or not.
And so he's at 1.48 fantasy point per minute without those guys on the floor. So
that is a big number. Like that's a huge number. And
usage, yeah.
And to your point, like not only the usage, but we're getting usage increase and we're getting price deduction from guys like Drummond and Jokic. So like you can save there if you want to spend up elsewhere. I think Vucevic is a great play. I want your take on Dwight Howard, and if you think that the production is sustainable, he is in a revenge spot against the Magic. The Magic fans, since I moved to Orlando, hate Dwight Howard. So anytime he is brought up around a Magic fan is the saltiest conversation you can possibly have. Every Magic fan I know hates Dwight Howard. I think this is a spot that Dwight takes personally. Do you think that the production is sustainable, especially considering it's a revenge narrative?
Yeah, I absolutely do. With that AD, we've seen his minutes go up into the 26, 28, 30-minute range. I don't see why it wouldn't in this spot. And, I mean, honestly, if this happens to get out of hand, we could see him get a little bit of extra run as well. Yeah, he's just totally smashed, and it is Orlando. And if you remember correctly, when he played for Washington last season, there was a couple of games against Orlando where he got close to 20 games. Now, he was playing close to 30 minutes, but it's probably not going to be as easy this go around, I would probably say. However, if he's going to get 26-plus minutes at 5.5, 5.7 across the board, yeah, I don't really see how you can't look at him.
Yeah, I'm actually having a hard time believing that he's going to be sub 2% on. I'm just going to throw that out there, especially considering.
Yeah, I think that could be a little off.
I think that we're missing like a 5 in front of the 1, personally, but just to round out the center position, just some guys that John has written up top. He does have Miles Turner in the playbook. I don't think Miles Turner is as good of a play anymore with Domantas Sabonis in. I think that was very contingent upon the Sabonis news. He also has Hassan Whiteside against Houston. Not the easiest matchup, but we know Whiteside has been a fantasy freak over the last couple months. He's shown tremendous upside. He's only 8.2K on DraftKings. That's too cheap. And his Cantor against Detroit. Detroit has been a bottom 3 defense against centers over the last month. Definitely exploitable there, even though Tice is back. And then DeAndre Jordan. John and I had a fun time watching the meteoric rise of DeAndre Jordan's fantasy points in the fourth quarter last night. He gave us like 15 fourth quarter fantasy points, still under 5K on FanDuel, and we know he's going to play 25 minutes. Sean, before we get out of here, 6:45, 15 minutes before roster lock, any final thoughts?
Jam in Drummond.
Jam in Drummond, indeed. Big thanks to John Impemba, a.k.a. Kyle Anderson's #1 fan, for producing today's show. And we'll be in subscriber chat leading up to roster lock, and we are out.